Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Sam Menzie, and we've got a show for you today. First topic we're going over is previewing the upcoming Subway Series, which does happen tonight in the Bronx. After that, we'll be going over Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and if the Blue Jays trade him or not, James Paxton's DFA by the Los Angeles Dodgers, Bobby Witt Jr.'s incredible season, and going over the All-MLB team and a little bit of a watch list for it. But before we do all that, I'd like to ask you to please like and follow the show. We do get a number of questions from viewers to ensure that your question does get read in the air. Please hit the link, gsmcpodcast.net. It really does help the show. It really does mean a lot. So thank you so much for that. And let's get into the show for today. All right, so one of my favorite things in all of the baseball season is happening again tonight, the Subway Series. Now, I might be biased growing up my whole life in New York being a Mets fan, but Subway Series has always been very, very fun. It's always been something for me that has been the highlight of a season for baseball, just the aesthetics of it, two historic teams, the Mets and the Yankees, and historic sports in baseball town, specifically New York, being able to take the subway to Queens and Bronx, being able to travel all across the boroughs through the subway, why it's called the Subway Series. It's just always been a lot of fun to me. I think it has lost a little bit of its appeal as we've gone later into baseball season, just because the Mets and Yankees just have kind of faltered as rivals. I would still say that there is still somewhat of a rivalry left, but I've been a Mets fan for my entire life, and I don't really hate the Yankees. I mean, I don't particularly like them, but at the same time, it's not a burning hate with me like I have for some other teams. I'm just looking at my fandom, like the Braves, the Phillies, who I genuinely do not like as a Mets fan. As a baseball fan hosting this podcast, obviously, I try to stay neutral, but just as a Mets fan who just personally has his own rooting appeal, I do not like the Phillies or the Braves whatsoever, and it's never really been that way for the Yankees. Like, I don't root for them. I don't like them, but again, I don't hate them. And they're also still representing the city I'm from, the city I root for teams from. So you also have that appeal as well. But I still think it's a lot of fun. The fan bases now, I think, have ignited in the last few years. And it means a lot, especially right now, especially when I'm recording this, July 23rd, because, simply put, both teams are really good. The Yankees are the top wild card seed in the American League, one of the best teams in all baseball. The Mets are in the playoffs as well and have done really, really well since the start of June. So both teams are doing very, very well right now. The fan bases are ignited. Both have a lot of hope for them. And even though the Yankees, haven't done the greatest these past few, weeks or so, months maybe, they still have a great record, still have been a really good team, and there's a lot of hype surrounding this, so I did want to just go over the Subway Series, preview it a little bit, and just go over my thoughts for all the games, the pitching matchups, who has the advantage, all that kind of stuff, so let's get into it. So, Game 1, which is, of course, happening tonight, 7:05, we have Jose Quintana versus Luis Gil. Now, Luis Gil did pitch for the Yankees against the Mets in the last Subway Series, of course, where the Mets absolutely demolished the Yankees in 2 games, and that was really the first start of Luis's entire season, where he really faced some adversity. Before that, he looked to be the AL Rookie of the Year frontrunner, locked in for that, was a huge part of this Yankees team, and instead really faced some adversity there. Really did not do well against this Mets lineup that was really starting to hit these past 2 weeks. It was one of his first tests, and he failed. And since then, he's been better, but he hasn't really lived up to the standard that he set fully at the start of the season, where he was as good as he was. So, might be a little bit of, a factor of Luis Gil wanting to get revenge here, show people that, I can't pitch against the Mets, I can pitch against these really elite offensive teams, so we'll be interested to watch that. With Quintana, he started off the season really, really rough. I know me and a lot of other Mets fans as well were calling for him to be DFA at one point, but has done much better as of recently, and the thing about Quintana is he's still a veteran. He still knows how to pitch, he still knows how to eat innings when you need him to. Even though his numbers haven't been the greatest at some points, he still is just a veteran, crafty pitcher, a guy who knows what he's doing out there on the mound, simply put. So, overall for this game, I still do think the Yankees have the advantage. I simply think that Luis Gil is a much better pitcher than Quintana, but at the same time, I don't think there's a huge advantage for either team. I think both have both have different kinds of pitchers, and I think the Yankees, simply put, have the, traditionally better pitcher on the mound, if you want to put it that way. So I do think the Yankees have the advantage for today's game. But also something interesting is their lineup for today. It just did come out, and I'm going to read you this Yankees lineup because I couldn't believe when I saw it. So, leading off and playing DH for the Yankees is Jahmai Jones. Not only is Jahmai Jones their starting DH, he's leading off. 2 and 3, you of course have Soto and Judge. But after that, you have J.D. Davis batting cleanup, Gleyber Torres 6th, Alex Verdugo 7th, Carlos Narvaez 8th, and then DJ LeMahieu 9th. That's a very interesting lineup. The fact that you have Jahmai Jones leading off, Carlos Narvaez in the lineup is very, very interesting. I understand it's a lefty, but I don't know why you have that. I don't know why you have J.D. Davis batting cleanup. Just an interesting lineup, to say the least. So as much as the Yankees do have the pitching advantage, not really a big fan of their lineup right now, to be perfectly honest with you. So we'll have to see what the Mets lineup looks like, and whenever that comes out, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, that is game one. For game two tomorrow, we have Showdown versus Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole also faced the Mets last time in the Subway Series. Heel and Cole both were in that, so it's a matchup of that as well. And he did bad also. It was one of his first starts coming off the IL. I believe it was his second. And he really did poorly. So it'll be interesting to see now if Cole can kind of rebound against the Mets. It's been very publicized that the Mets are really the one team throughout Cole's entire career that he's struggled against. He's really never done well against this Mets team. So, I'm sure there's a little bit of a chip on his shoulder trying to prove to people that he can pitch in Queens, can pitch in Citi Field, and be able to be competitive against this Mets team. So it should be interesting. Sean Manaea, I think, is a good fit against this Yankees team. Again, they're not the greatest at facing lefties, and I think with his experience in big-time games, should be fun to watch him in the Subway Series. And, see how he does pitch and see what the results are there. So, obviously, the Yankees, again, have the advantage, but at the same time, I think the Mets right now have the lineup advantage, and both pitchers they have aren't bad. It's just the Yankees have pitchers who have been better this year. So, I do want to say that. But this series, as I said before, has a lot of riding to it. I think one of the reasons why the Subway Series has been so kind of just desensitized over the past few years, where people don't really care about it as much, is simply because the teams have been not that great. I mean, just looking at last year, both the Mets and the Yankees didn't make the playoffs. And looking at the past few years as well, really since 2016, the Mets have not been that competitive. 2017, they were bad. 2018, they were bad. 2019, they didn't make the playoffs. 2020, they were bad. 2021, they were bad. 2022, they were great. But really, since I'd say 2017 to 2021, they were not a good team. 2019, I'd say maybe is the difference in that, but they still didn't make the playoffs and weren't really good till the second half. So with this, I think now it finally has a lot more riding to it, simply because both teams are very good. As I said, the Yankees have a lot going for them right now. They're trying to keep up desperately with the Orioles, trying to keep up in first place with that AL East. They are the first wild card spot, and with the Mets, they are also the third wild card spot and very heavily in the playoff mix right now. So it should be interesting to watch, see how these two teams do end up playing. And, they have a lot riding for this. So right now, you look at the Mets situation for the playoffs. Again, they are 11 and a half games out of the NL East, so obviously they're not going to win. But the thing that I think is very, very interesting is that the Mets are only 3 back from the Braves. So that's an interesting thing. I don't think people are talking about. And the also thing about that is interesting after this is they play the Braves starting Thursday. They play in a 4-game series actually, which could be huge in deciding this year. And something else that happens is Kodai Senga is coming back for that series. So, the Braves are playing the Reds. The Braves are playing the Reds today and tomorrow as well, finishing up that series. So it should be interesting there. What happens with that? If the Braves, let's say, drop a game, the Mets win both, this series going into Thursday and Friday means a lot for the Mets and the Braves. So I think that's why this series is a lot going for it. With the Mets, they could potentially go to second place and do the impossible that I don't think anyone would have imagined at the start of this year, beating out the Braves for a spot in this division. So, especially second place, obviously everyone expected the Braves to be in first place. So I think that has a lot riding for it as well that people aren't really talking about. And with the Yankees as well, again, they have a ton riding on this because of where they are in the standings. They're 1.5 games back from the Orioles, so they really have to win every single game to have a chance to get in there because the Orioles have just been so good. You look at the wild card as well. What's interesting is they're only 3 up from the Twins. So the Twins go on a good streak and the Yankees start losing these games and dropping like flies, they could potentially lose the first wild card spot as well, which I really looked at as a lock. So I think there's a lot riding for both these teams when the Subway Series does commence, and I think that's really what makes this very interesting. Again, a lot riding for it, which usually never happens. So very interested to watch it and very excited to end up seeing what is going to happen here. Going into the deadline as well, I think both these teams have a lot to add. The Mets really need bullpen help, could also add another reliever, and the Yankees need at least 2 infielders, I'd say, at least 2 relievers, and maybe another starter as well. We'll have to see. So again, I think tomorrow is going to be my day where I do kind of the trade deadline extravaganza. which it's a week before the deadline, so I wanted to just, make all my predictions. So I think that'll be tomorrow's show, mainly about that and just going over everything and, predicting where I think everyone is going to go. So yeah, we're doing that. But yeah, again, both these teams have a lot of needs going at the deadline, and it'll be very, very interesting to be able to see, where these teams go to add and what they do end up adding at this deadline. I think both teams have a lot of needs going into this, and again, both have very good chances of being able to compete in this playoffs as well. So it will be a lot of fun to see what happens. So that is it for our first segment, previewing the Subway Series and going over it. Moving into our second segment, which is going to be talking about to trade or not to trade. This time, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I did this yesterday as well with Mason Miller and Tarek Subel, and I wanted to add on today with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., talking about if I think the Blue Jays should or shouldn't trade him. So yeah, we'll be doing that, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord.